Everyone, welcome to our second episode. Am I depressed? This is our first official topic. We'll be discussing depression today. Thanks for joining us.
And I am Dr. Irby. It's so good to be back with you guys.
Yes. So, Dr. Irby, what have you been up to?
Nothing.
What have you been up to since the last time we talked?
Nothing. So overall, nothing, I guess. I went to my best friend's wedding in California. She got married. Woo! Yes.
You.
And I did that in the first week of October. But what happened was because I was on night float, all of my shifts that would be in 4 weeks had to be squished into 3 weeks. And so it led to a series of 3 weeks where I was working pretty much 5 or 6 days a week, which doesn't sound that bad, but for a night float at least at our institute, it's like the hours are much longer than if you work during the day. So the short shifts are 12 hours and the long shifts are 15 hours, and that's just like insane. So my house is dirty, like my hair was falling, my braids was falling out at one point, like it was just everything fell apart because I would just go to work, go home, sleep, come back, and thank goodness for my boyfriend who kept me alive. He would make sure I ate and make sure I did life things at least to keep me functional because it's been a very rough month. But overall, a good month. I'm just glad I got it over with. And I mean, at the end of the day, my best friend in the whole wide world got married. So
that's nice.
Very good things. Other than that, I really haven't been doing anything but working and sleeping. It's kind of crazy. Oh, but I did do life things today because I was off today. I cleaned my car, my new car. I got to clean for the first time. So that's good. And if any of you are wondering, California is beautiful. So don't hesitate to go, especially San Diego. It is gorgeous.
I'm going to California in March.
Which part?
LA.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so LA is kind of dirty. But but it's a lot of fun. Like the energy in LA is insane. And make sure you go to, I think it's Venice Beach. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
So it's good energy. Traffic's terrible. Food's great. Music is great. LA's a lot of fun. Like San Diego is like the chill version of California where everybody like smokes weed, I'm not gonna lie, and like sits on the porch. And LA is like the fast paced, like everybody there loves music and arts and dancing, and there's always something going on even if you just like turn the corner. So, nice. What have you been up to?
So I've been up to a lot of the same things, working. I recently, coordinated everything as far as my scheduling. I'll be switching to psychiatry starting in January.
What are you switching from?
I'm switching from internal medicine and psychiatry just to psychiatry.
Okay.
So doing that, coordinating with my schedule, everything worked out, thankfully. And I'll be able to just transition starting in January. And I also will be able to shave off a year from my training. It was going to be 5 years, but now it's going to just be the 4 years. So I'm really thankful that, my program director was able, to see that I really was unhappy doing medicine. And he was able to, adjust things for me. And so I'll be starting in just psychiatry in January.
Welcome to the dark side.
Another thing I've been doing is I signed up. Charlemagne the God just came out with this book called Shook, Playing Tricks on Me. And so whenever I heard about it, it was like 3 months ago, I signed up for to get a copy of the book. And I didn't think that they were going to actually send it. But they sent the book for free. And so I started reading that last night.
Okay.
And it's really based on his anxiety and how he has noticed that he's had anxiety since he was a child. Huh. So I've only read 50 pages of it, but it's a pretty good book.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we should probably do a review.
All right.
I think
it's a good idea, actually.
Yeah, to do a review on it. He's actually from Charleston area.
Yes.
Yeah.
My boyfriend loves him. if I'm being completely honest, I wasn't a big fan of him for a while because I felt like he used to just like spaz out on people and like go crazy.
Yeah.
But if any of you don't know who Charlamagne the God is, he is a public figure. He has podcasts and things like that. And I think that he went from being somebody who was like absolutely out of control to somebody who really is now making a difference within the African American community and other communities and really trying to raise awareness for mental health.
With the help of therapy.
So, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. So
he talks about that. So we'll do a book review on that.
We will.
So today we're going to talk about depression. We actually did get a hit up in our DMs on our Instagram, Mind Games, the podcast. So I'm going to read that right now. So the DM is from an anonymous person. And they ask a simple question. How can I tell the difference between depression and just regular, everyday sadness? Okay?
That's a good question.
That's a great question. I'll start off by basically telling you our criteria and as psychiatrists, the way we diagnose depression. So depression, it is diagnosed by an individual that must experience 5 or more symptoms during a 2-week period, and at least one of those symptoms need to be a depressed mood or a loss of interest or pleasure. Now, out of the 9 symptoms that our criteria list, you, like I said, have to experience 5 of those for greater than 2 weeks, and those are depressed mood, diminished interest, significant weight loss or weight gain, a slowing down of thought, a reduction in physical movement, fatigue or loss of interest, energy, feeling worthless, excessive or inappropriate guilt, recurrent thoughts of death, recurrent suicidal ideation without a specific plan, or a specific attempt. So if you experience at least 5 of those things more than 2 weeks, by definition, you're diagnosed with depression.
Which is major depression.
Major depressive disorder is what you would be diagnosed with.
So, yeah, I think what's hard about depression is that, like, that's what's considered major depression, but, like, there's mild, there's moderate, there's major depression that where some of the symptoms get better, so they consider you in partial remission. It gets very, very technical, but I think that one of the biggest things that we could kind of draw from all of this in general is that when you start to notice that your mood is affecting your life and affecting your ability to just live and communicate with others and to do everyday things that you would normally do, I think that is where you're kind of crossing the line from being sad into depressed. I also think that when you are getting to the point where you're like, I really love this video game and I play this video game all the time, and then you play it and you notice that it's just not enjoyable for you. Like everything that used to be enjoyable is just so hard to really get pleasure from. I think that's where we kind of draw the line into major depression from just being sad. And then a lot of the times we'll use different surveys in clinic, whether you start a medicine or whether you go into therapy, we'll use different surveys to kind of that you would fill out yourself. One of them's called like the patient health questionnaire. I don't know if any of you guys have ever taken that. Sometimes they'll have you just fill out 2 of those questions while you're in the waiting room and you don't even know you're filling it out. Just to screen if your general practitioner should or your like regular doctor should ask you more questions. And so sometimes we'll use that system to kind of see where you're at when you first come to see us and where you're at in the future as far as getting better or worse. And I think that a lot of the people ask the question of like, so what do I do if I'm depressed? And I think that the journey from moving from depression back into who you were is a very individualized thing. So it takes time, it takes patience, and I think people get frustrated because they're like, oh, my friend took this medicine and she felt better in 2 weeks, or oh, my friend just went to church and she felt better in a week, or my friend just went to her counselor and she felt better in a month. And I think people get so caught up in other people's journeys that they forget that their own journey is like something that's very individual. So that's my little spiel on depression.
Yeah, that's really good. And just to summarize, basically to answer your question, like Brittany said, is that if you're exhibiting any of those symptoms that I talk about and it's hindering you from living your everyday life, that's whenever we're crossing the line from sadness, which is a normal emotion to experience, to depression. And so that was a very good spiel on that topic. Brittany, did anybody like write in the emails or come up to you on today's podcast?
Yeah, so I actually did get a question about today's topic, but it's more so about the topic of suicide, which I felt was also very connected to what we're talking about today. And suicide today is just a whole nother, we could spend a whole nother podcast talking about suicide.
And we will.
But she kind of asked the question basically that, and she asked to remain anonymous. So Miss A asked the question of, in a child, in an adolescent, how is it that they can just commit suicide? Like, are there signs? Are there things that we miss? Is there any way to know or tell? In this particular person's case, and I'm sure she won't mind me sharing this, is she had a granddaughter whose friend at school, who was 15 years old, all of a sudden committed suicide. He was not someone who was bullied. He was actually someone who got straight A's. He's not someone that anybody knew had a hard time at home, and it just kind of happened. And so the question was, are there signs prior to someone committing suicide? And part of my answer is yes and no. We live in a time, unfortunately, and I'm just gonna go ahead and name drop it because this show makes me so angry as a psychiatrist, where 13 Reasons Why is this huge thing within pop culture. And although the purpose of it is to raise awareness, I think that the execution of it and the graphic nature of it almost, and the way that it came across, almost glorifies suicide, in the sense of, if you kill yourself, this is what is going to happen when you leave these tapes and all these other people who are the reasons that you ended your life. And that's not how it is. I would say almost all of the time, that's not how it is. You end your life and your life is over. And so a lot of these teenagers are seeing this show and they're like, okay, she ended her life and this is the impact she had on everyone else. And so when in teenagers, we have a lot of kids who are actually depressed, who show you signs, who will actually do things at home. You start to see they're not sleeping, or they're in their room all the time, or they're not eating, or their grades are dropping. But you also have a lot of kids nowadays and teenagers who are what I call just straight up impulsive. So you'll have see a situation where a 9-year-old girl will be like, I want to do this, and mom will say, put that away. And she's like, well, if you don't let me do this, I'm just going to kill myself. And so I think the most important thing is communication at all times within the family. So that way, if there is a way that you could screen for whether or not someone is depressed prior to an attempt, you can intervene. But that being in mind, understanding that the culture today is about impulsivity, about immediate response, immediate gratification. So it leads to a lot of people impulsively doing things without thinking about the consequences of what they're doing. So I've seen so many teenagers who have seen 13 Reasons Why and who have actually mimicked that suicidal attempt. And thank God they're still alive to this day, but they'll be like, oh, I'm not influenced by that. And I was like, but your attempt on your life was actually exactly like the show. They have no idea how much influence on what they're seeing and what they're hearing is actually influencing their actions. So social media plays a huge role in the overall impulsivity of today's age. So to answer your question, Miss A, sometimes there are signs and sometimes there are not. I just think the biggest thing that we can do as a community is be aware of not only what's going on with our children, our teenagers, but what they're being exposed to, because that plays a huge role in their actions. So, what about you, Dr. Smith?
And what she specifically is referring to with just the prevalence of suicide attempts that grow from seeing things on TV or reading things in books is she's specifically referring to the term suicide contagion, in which basically you would, like in 13 Reasons Why, would see the way, and I actually have not watched that. I feel like I'm a bad psychiatrist because I haven't.
Yeah,
but
probably makes you a better psychiatrist.
But but you see a particular way a person commits suicide, and therefore to some people it is glorified or put in a way that makes other people, when they're considering committing suicide, to go about it that way. And it's something that has been prevalent throughout our history with other different books and topics as well. One of our psychiatry residents actually did an article on suicide contagion that you can find in the, I think, American Psychiatry Association.
Yeah. And he actually listens to this podcast.
Yeah.
I'm going to name drop him. Dr. Matthew Fadis.
Dr. Matthew
Go
Fadis.
look at his article. He actually did a very good summary of kind of the effects of 13 Reasons Why.
Right. But like Brittany said, definitely it's a yes and no for me as well when it comes to can you always tell. You said exactly what I was going to say as far as like we live in an impulsive society, and a lot of times a large majority of completed suicides are actually in teenagers from an impulsive act. And so they break up with their boyfriend or they get a bad grade in school, and from that they say, you know what, I'm going to go commit suicide, something that they probably had not even been thinking about or thought about, and they just impulsively go and they impulsively act on it. Two, on the spectrum where you would see a person that's being more withdrawn, someone that's like an extrovert that's out there always, they're withdrawn now, they're not sleeping, they're not eating, and they basically also may have made little comments, quote unquote joking, saying what if I kill myself. Those comments sometimes are people's way of letting you know that I'm thinking about this, that I'm actually considering this. And what we as psychiatrists look for is a specific plan, because that, in itself puts the suicide attempt, to me, it makes it more serious, because that means to me as a psychiatrist that you have actually sat down, thought of a plan and a way of actually committing suicide. So all of those things that I said.
I will bring in a personal story. I will say that I went through my own bout of depression when I was a teenager. I had a situation in which the church in which I grew up in, I was very, very close friends with everyone at that church. And a situation happened where it was almost like the movies. It was like crazy to me, because I like watch a movie now and I was like, wow, like things that like happen in this movie really happened to me in real life. And before you experience it, sometimes you're like, there's no way people can be this mean. Mm-hmm. And so there was a situation that happened that basically got around the entire church. And from that situation, people started like talking about me. They started going up to my grandparents at church. They started calling me. They started emailing me. They started writing like blogs about me. It was like the craziest thing I've ever experienced. And I honestly tried to remove myself from the situation. I tried to just go to school, live a normal life. But like, everything that was being written about me, everything that was being sent to me that I could see broke me down. I was so heartbroken. This was a church I grew up in, and these were girls that I looked up to. And so when I almost felt like it was bullying the way that I was being treated.
It sounds like it was bullying.
And so there was like name calling, and then like crazy things that would happen. Like weeks later, somebody would message me and be like, I heard you said this, and if this is what you said, then this is how we feel about you. And I was just like, how could I say anything? I haven't been in that church in a month and a half, and I haven't been on social media because I actually was on punishment that whole time. So I was like, it's like a movie. Like things that I didn't do, things that I didn't say, were being said that I did, and and it was like insane to me, and it broke me all the way down. I would go to school, and I would come home, and I would close my door, and I tell this story because I think a way that to intervene with depression is to realize what's going on and to pay attention and open that line of communication. And what I appreciate about my parents is, I'm not even sure that my mom is going to remember this, but like what I appreciated is they saw everything did to me. Like I literally stopped functioning as who I was. I stopped talking. I stopped doing my homework properly. And on top of that, I was on punishment. So I wasn't watching TV. I wasn't anything. And I think that they realized how much it broke me down, and they actually lifted my punishment early. Not to say that parents should lift punishments early, because we do need to discipline our kids. But I think they were able to see what was going on with me, and it made all the difference in my outcome towards the end of it all, because they were able to notice that my behavior changed. So, and I made it through it. To answer the question that people might be thinking, I did not take any medicine for it. I think that every case is unique and different. Some people need medicine, and you need medicine. Let's be clear. Depression actually messes with the neurotransmitters and the different chemicals in our brain. So some people actually do need medicine. That doesn't make you weak. That doesn't make you not a believer in God, because a lot of people will say, "Well, I'm a Christian. I should just be able to pray and I feel better." No, depression will actually affect the chemicals in your brain.
Right.
And so some people need medicine, and I also didn't go through therapy, but I think that I would have benefited from it. So I think everybody's journey is different, and I could have benefited from therapy at that time. And I think a lot of people would benefit through therapy, period. Therapy teaches you how to process, and processing not only helps you through depression, but it also helps you through the impulsivity of this time. It helps you to think about your actions before you do them. So,
and
small plug for therapy.
No, therapy is legit for real. And like I said, I think it should just be something that people do, just like you go to the primary care doctor. You're like, oh, I haven't seen my therapist this month. I need to go, get my therapy checkup.
Seriously.
Thank you for sharing that, Brittany. It really was, I think it's going to help a lot of people that are listening. And I can go into a little bit about my bout with depression. I was actually in medical school when my depression
by itself
started.
will make you depressed.
Right. Baseline, you depressed. You already meet criteria. You know what I'm saying? But in medical school is when I went through my bout of depression, and it had a lot to do with my father being ill. He was diagnosed with cancer, and so I was trying to process just how my life was going to be now that he had cancer and could possibly die from the cancer. And not, like Brittany said, not to speak about just the stress of medical school on you anyway. And I just went through a serious bout of depression. I love to eat at baseline. You know what I'm saying? But at that time, I wasn't eating. I was sleeping. Literally, I was counting. My friends were counting like 20 hours a day. I describe depression for me in a way that when they say, decreased energy, decreased, motion, movement, that's exactly what happened to me. I describe it as going from my bed to get in the shower was like running a marathon. It wasn't happening. For me, it was impossible. And that would go on for like weeks and weeks at a time, where I just could not get out of bed. It was so severe that I eventually had to leave medical school and go home for a while, just to deal with it, and just to get better. I saw great doctors. I actually did for a while start some medications. that was very helpful for me. I won't like say the specific medication or whatnot, but I started medications, and I took that semester out of medical school and was able to start the following year. Um, I did not specifically get therapy, but I wish I would have. But I also, and I was torn, and I went back and forth with, do I need to be on medication? And even my mom and dad, because I'm Southern Baptist, my dad was a minister for 30 years. My mom also, was heavily involved in ministry. And whenever they saw how depressed I was, they, initially they're going to do what they know. They're going to do what has helped them and sustained them their whole lives. They started to pray. And when the idea or the, topic of medication came up, I would say my dad initially was like, no, we're going to pray this, we're going to pray for this. We're going to get you in church. But my mom was the one that was like, I agree with that and we will do that. But look at him.
Yeah.
Like this isn't, and the way she explained it to my dad was that God placed people here to help us, to help him. And just because you go to a psychiatrist don't mean that you believe in God. In fact, because I do believe in God, he found a great psychiatrist to help him out of the hole that he was in.
Yeah.
And I think that that's, very important as specifically us as African Americans, to pray it away, that, you did something and you did something that caused this to happen and this just is a test from God. I think all of that needs to be put into context because it's people out there that are suffering. Mm-hmm. It's people out there that are, contemplating ending their lives because of their illness that can be helped through therapy. They can be helped through medications. And if it's severe where those things are not helping, we got other options, ECT and TMS and things like that. So,
which are specifically different types of ways that you can kind of shock your brain. Just like you would shock your heart if it's not working, there are ways you can shock your brain and that have been proven to help with depression.
Right. And so, it's things out there for people to utilize and to make them better. And so we just tell our stories to let you know that you're not alone, that there are options out there to help you, and that being real with yourself, communicating, effective communication, like Brittany said, with your family, your friends, can lead you to the place where you feel that you are ready to get the help that you need.
Yeah. And we are two residents in psychiatry who have been through depression before, so we know what it's like, and a lot of the times it's really funny because I'm in clinic and people are always like, well, you don't understand what I'm going through, and I'm kind of like, I don't want to draw the attention to me because you're my patient, but I do know what you're going through.
I do know what you're going through.
And the worst part about that is, and the reason that I am so excited about this podcast is that when I was going through depression, I didn't know I was going through depression because I had no education on mental health.
Yep.
I didn't know when I needed to get help or when I should ask for help because no one taught me about that. It wasn't talked about in the schools. It wasn't talked about in my neighborhood. It sure as ever wasn't talked about at church. They're just like, pray it away. And so
the voice.
So
pray it away.
So all that to say is, like, looking back now that I have the education,
oh dang,
that's when I realized that during that period of time I was depressed, and all the signs and symptoms of depression I had at that time. So that being said, I wanted to also bring up the fact that I really enjoy and appreciate now that in our culture and in our times, people with big names are starting to realize the importance of mental health.
Yes.
And I wanted to specifically name drop Taraji P. Henson. She started, or she used her own clothing, her own dresses, shoes, and purses to raise money for the Boris Lawrence Henson Foundation. which was actually named after her late father. And her inspiration for starting it and for creating it was in the context of the fact that her son had some mental health issues such as depression, and he couldn't find a therapist or a psychiatrist that looked like him. And it made her kind of sit back and realize that within the African American community and minority communities as a whole, we really don't talk about mental health. And I think that sometimes we see it as a sign of weakness. We don't address it. And so what can we do as a people to raise awareness that just like it's important to take care of your blood pressure, just like it's important to take care of other things in life, you got to take care of yourself, your mind.
Yes.
Because if you don't take care of your mind, there's a lot of other things that won't get taken care of. So.
Definitely. Also want to shout out Chance the Rapper. Recently headlined that he gave $1 million to the Chicago Mental Health Foundation. Was it a foundation or did he just give money to?
I think he just gave money.
Okay. Well, he gave money to the mental health cause in Chicago, and that's huge.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff, when we make mental health mainstream, which is really one of the reasons why we chose to do this podcast, things are going to get better. People are going to feel like they can communicate their issues, and people are going to get better.
Yeah.
And that's why we're here. That's why we took on this project, is to normalize mental health by even talking about ourselves, to let other people know that, hey, other people are out there that struggle. I'm struggling. I can go get help because they went and got help. Yeah. Or at least just education.
Yep.
On like our question, what's the difference between sadness and depression? People out there really don't know, but we're here to help you to know.
Yep.
So, thanks for tuning in.
Yeah.
I'm happy that we could once again come and talk about today depression. Next month, I don't know what we'll talk about.
Y'all should email us or DM us and tell us what you guys want for a topic. I have an idea of what they're going to say.
Okay.
I'm not going to reveal it right now because then everybody going to actually email. They're not going to email us.
Right. Email us, DM us. Let us know what topics you want to talk about, because this is all about you. Yeah. And we are here to serve and to help push.
What are we pushing?
The platform. The platform of mental illness. So
yeah, and I mean, it doesn't have to be a specific diagnoses within mental health. It could just be something like you want to know about therapy or a personality disorders, or how do I handle this if this comes up, and we can go from there. We can kind of spin this any way you guys want. It's all about y'all.
Right. So find us on our Instagram, Mind Games the PC. DM us there. Our email, mindgamesthepc@gmail.com. For any questions, concerns, anything, we're here for you.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for listening.
Woo. Oh, yeah.